Hi, welcome everyone. Welcome to the July PyData Jeddah meetup. I'm your host for today's meetup. My name is Afnan, and working behind the scenes, my team members, Yasmin, Hassan, Abdullah, and Najla. Today we have Juan with us as a presenter. Thank you, Juan, for accepting the invitation. He will be talking about web scraping with Python using requests and Beautiful Soup. But before we begin, just some general information about the group. PyData recently launched new chapters in Saudi Arabia, and one of them is PyData Jeddah. We are a part of NumFocus as a bigger organization, and we are here to learn and develop ourselves professionally. We are a welcoming community. We are here to share knowledge, learn from each other, and build connections. So yeah, there is one thing to mention. Is we're having a PyData Global 2020 conference in November between the 11th and 15th. So this is just a call for proposals, which is open right now. So if anyone is interested in preparing and giving a talk, please go ahead and visit global.pydata.org to see further details. So again, now back to what we all here for. We are going to hear from Juan about web scraping with Python using request and Beautiful Soup. We all are excited and looking forward to this talk. Juan is a business analyst with a digital media company focused on financial services, and he's also a data analytics instructor at General Assembly. He's an entrepreneur and a leader who has experience with SQL, Python, business intelligence tools, GIS, digital strategy, and product development. And I think Juan may present himself better than me. So yeah, that's all from my side. Over to you, Juan. Take it away.
Thank you, Adnan. Hello, everybody. I'm in Los Angeles, so it's a little early. I'm still getting my coffee over here. I know you all are wrapping up your days over there. I just want to thank Yasmin, Adnan, and the whole group for having me and inviting me for this opportunity. As mentioned, I'm a former advertiser, and so over the last probably 6 years or so, I've been working on my data skills, becoming a data analyst, working towards being a data scientist and a data engineer. PyData has been an awesome organization for me, skills that matter in this field. And I would encourage everyone who feels like, even if you're just getting started, consider submitting a talk. We all have something we can share. And so if you have that in you, I encourage you to participate, because the community benefits, and the more we all participate, the more the PyData community benefits. So I really want to encourage everyone to do that. At this point, I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to review a handful of concepts that will provide kind of like a foundation for the actual web scrape that we will conduct. I'll be sharing a link to a notebook, a Google Collaboratory notebook. So if you have a Gmail account, you'll be able to use that. If you want to watch and just reference this later, that is, reference the notebook and try it yourself later, that's totally fine. I will also share a link to the solution in case, the original notebook doesn't work out for you, or whatever it might be. All right. If after this you all have questions, if I can be a resource to anybody out there, please, that's one of the reasons I appreciated this opportunity to be able to connect across boundaries, across oceans. You all are in a different part of the world than me, and I just think this is very cool that we can collaborate in this way. So if I can be of service to any of you, please don't hesitate to reach out. All right, let me share my screen here. Give me 1 second. Just up to go with this one. Okay. You should all be seeing web scraping with Beautiful Soup. We're not doing Yelp APIs, but with Beautiful Soup. Can someone confirm that you all are seeing my screen at this point, please?
Yes,
I can see it.
Excellent. Great. Thank you for that confirmation. All right, so let's do this. Let me make this a little smaller. Let's go small this way. We'll maximize this. All right, so a little bit about me. It was already kind of mentioned, but I work by day as a business analyst. It really means that I'm a data analyst working with a variety of data analytics tools, working with SQL, collaborating with the data science team, and contributing my data science skills wherever possible. We also have a data engineering team / business intelligence team, and they oversee anything from data architecture to supporting us, the analytics team, in creating new products that would, help our teammates make better decisions using the data that's available to them. In my career is definitely non-traditional. For the past 5 years, I had been working in government as a data analyst and as a technical project manager, all kinds of data in my government time. But my career started in the private sector. And so, as I mentioned, I started as an advertiser. I was a technology salesperson. And now after 5 years in government, I decided I was kind of over government. I love technology. I love like building the future. And, if you like building the future, government is not where you build the future. It's catching up. Government is forever behind. With that said, I would encourage everybody out there to consider joining government, even if just for a little bit. A year, 2 years, 3 years. Local governments and municipalities need professionals. They need data practitioners like ourselves. They need technologists like ourselves. So I would really encourage you all, as you keep developing your careers, to consider government, even if it's just for a little bit. Additionally, I teach a number of classes focused on data through an online school, or I guess a global school that's now all online, but it does offer in-person classes. It's called General Assembly. And so I teach a 6-week class, a 10-week class, and then a number of one-off classes focused on data analytics, where we look at SQL, Tableau, advanced Excel. I also do a class focused on mapping, which is something I love. I'm very active on social media, less so now than before, but I definitely maintain my activity. Here's my handle, Juan S. Vaz, in case anybody wants to follow along. I typically follow back. And then here's my website right here, vasquez.com. In here, I have a number of projects that I've built both for work and for myself. So in case anyone is thinking about, hey, like I want a job in this field, how can I kind of like build up a portfolio, or how can I make myself more appealing to future opportunities? I would encourage you to set yourself up with a little website and just drop in, some of your data projects. You could put in a Jupyter notebook. You could put in, a number of things that might make sense for you. This is a Google site, so it's free, and it doesn't really require much from me. So one thing there. All right, here's what we're going to be getting into. The agenda is a little bit twisted. It actually doesn't make all that much sense because we're not doing any Yelp stuff, but we're going to talk about why scraping is helpful. Then we're going to do a brief review of HTML, because we will be using Beautiful Soup, which is a library that helps us target HTML tags or HTML components of a website. And once we can target them, then we can treat them and handle them in different ways. As part of that, we will identify the HTML tags that are of interest for us. Then we will be reviewing the website that we will be scraping. So we're going to see exactly what that looks like, and we're going to kind of pick it apart. And then once we have at least a foundational understanding of what we're going to be doing, then we're going to jump into our notebooks and we're going to start scraping. All right. I think that strategy is super important, and really getting kind of comfortable with where you're going in a project, that really, really matters. So why should we even care about web scraping? Why does it matter? Why is it helpful? Well, in my career, I have found that web scraping can be beneficial for two primary reasons. The first is you can scrape web content to help you create more content. So if you have a website, if you have a newsletter, if you have a social media channel, if you maybe have a magazine or other type of materials that are all about getting people to look at your content and what you have to offer, then you can use web scraping for that, to create additional content that can help you drive web traffic and more generally create awareness about what it is that you or your company or organization offers, and have some dialogue. You can do some data capture when you have thoughtful narratives. You could potentially drive sales or drive engagement, and using that outside data to do so could be beneficiary. The second option is really more internal. And the idea here would be, and this is mostly how I've used web scraping, is to create or inform intelligence tools. So as an organization, we're always making decisions. Every day decisions need to be made. The more of the right decisions that can be made, the better off the organization will be. So you can use web scraping on anything like resource allocation. If maybe you're trying to understand, where should we send people? Where should we open up a store? Where do we need more inventory? Where do we have more potential customers or volunteers or whatever it might be? Web scraping can help inform some of those conversations. Additionally, it's a great source of market research. You can do web scraping just to better understand an audience. Even if you're not going to be doing any sort of like direct outreach to them or engagement, you can understand a community better, and that can then help inform additional operations. And lastly, many organizations have their own data, right? Like internal data, data that gets shared to them, data they buy, whatever it might be. Well, you can scrape data to enrich or enhance the data that you already have. This is a little bit of what we used web scraping for in my prior job. I worked with the city of Los Angeles with the Office of Finance. And the Office of Finance, the main responsibility is to work with the various businesses in the city of Los Angeles. And so we did a web scraping project where we basically scraped a bunch of web directories and tried to understand what businesses have we not engaged with. Los Angeles is a massive city. It's like, I think like 4 million people, 500 square miles. So aside from having a lot of people, it's very big. And so thinking about how to engage businesses and our customers in a really big geographical area, that can be quite a challenge, especially if your government, a slow, outdated organization. And so we created a scorecard. And in that scorecard, we had a variety of data sources. And some of those data sources were the online directories that I scraped. And so if a business appeared on multiple parts of our scorecard, including the scraped data resources, then we realized that it helped us validate that the business was real and that we should think about how to engage them. So that's a little bit about why web scraping can be helpful, why it matters. I'm sure you've all, you're in this webinar, this organization, because data matters. There's various metaphors, but some people say that data is the new oil, data is the new water, data is the new air. I think data is a resource that is right up there with some of our natural resources as far as importance. If you have data, you have power. If you have data, you have influence. And if you just look at the internet, it's full of data, right? Like there's an amazing amount of data all around us digitally. If you learn how to scrape, then you learn how to have access to that information in perhaps more flexible ways than just copying and pasting stuff over or just downloading whatever is readily available. So that's a little bit on why I really enjoy this. I like the hacky part of it too. I feel a little bit like just like I have a superpower or something. I don't know. It's very cool. All right, so we talked a little bit about why web scraping matters. Now let's talk about HTML very briefly. I assume most of you all here have some level of understanding of what HTML is, hypertext markup language. It's one of the basic languages that helps us build websites, and it is really oriented around having specific tags that correspond with a public or a visual interface that we want our users to interact with. So on the left side of the screen, we have a very simple example. It's a web page that says hello again, and it has some sample text. On the right side, we have the behind the scenes HTML that shows us the HTML tags that make up the public facing interface of this website. Okay, and so we'll be using Beautiful Soup for this tutorial, Beautiful Soup is all about HTML. At the end, I'll mention some other libraries or Python tools that could be helpful to you in web scraping. But for Beautiful Soup, what you really need to prioritize are your tags. And we're going to explore the website a little bit to get a sense of what matters most to us. I'm just keeping track of my notes here. So this is just some foundational HTML matters. I'm sure most of you all have been exposed to it in some capacity. If you want to scrape with Beautiful Soup, you're going to need to learn how to navigate these kind of like tagging structures in an HTML document properly. So let's get ahead of ourselves. We're going to explore the website that we're about to scrape, but I will go ahead and call out the HTML tags that matter to us for this particular, miniature project that we will be doing over the next roughly 20, 25, 30 minutes. We're going to be primarily interested in the LI HTML tag, and this corresponds with a list item. So LI will be a tag of importance. We're also going to really care about divs. These are divisions or sections. They're almost containers within websites. And then the last one that will really matter to us is span. These are like small versions of divs. These are inline containers. And so they typically hold smaller amounts of information within a broader HTML document. All right, so if you're gonna be watching, don't worry about writing this down. If you're gonna be following along with the hands-on kind of activity portion of this, then I would encourage you to write these three down on the side. That way you just kind of, I'll remind us, but notes are important. I think they make for a good professional. So I would encourage you to write down these three HTML tags: LI, div, and span. And now let's go review the website. Yeah, let's review the website that we're gonna get into, and then we're gonna circle back and review a little bit more of the libraries and the tasks that we have to do. So this is the website that's great. I am a huge soccer fan. I'm Colombian by birth. Soccer is kind of in our blood. And so I'm just a big fan. This is my favorite team, the Los Angeles Football Club, LAFC. This is just their main website. And one thing I like to do is I like to do passion projects for myself, just to show what I can do, just to engage with different topics that I perhaps, tactics. I love my work and I learn a lot at work, but I find that sometimes if I have a passion project that is really just something that interests me, I will end up learning a few additional things. And so one thing that I really like about our team is that it is very young and it is very international. We have players from all over the world. And so I thought it would be fun for us to scrape the actual player list and do some basic analysis around the players' positions, around their age perhaps, or their weight, and just really learn a little bit more about the team. Okay, so this is the page that we'll be scraping. Let me see if I can drop this into our chat so you'll have it. I don't think I can share in a chat while I'm sharing my screen. Okay, well, if you want to go to the site is lafc.com/players. But now what we need to do is we need to inspect the HTML of this page to really identify the tags, which I've already mentioned to you all, right? We said that LI, div, and span were going to be the tags of interest. So let's go ahead and explore this page. Here's what I would want you all to do. I would want you to either do a right mouse click if your mouse has buttons. If your mouse doesn't have buttons, then just click with 2 fingers so that you generate this dialog box. And let's go ahead and inspect this page. As soon as I click inspect, and this might be a little tip or trick that you all learn at some point in school or just playing around with computers, but as soon as I inspect the page, I get all of the background coding, background HTML, background documentation, links that make up this public-facing experience. And so what we would need to do, I've already done it for us in identifying the tags, But typically the workflow would be, okay, we know that we want each of these players with the details associated with them. If you click this arrow right here, this arrow will now identify in the code, it'll basically tell you based on what you're clicking, how that corresponds with the code. So you will see here that all of the players are made up of this LI tag with the row class. Okay, so this is where we begin to understand that we're going to use the LI tag with a row class to target our players. Okay, so we see everybody. You will notice that the first player, Eduardo Atuesta, who's fellow Colombian like myself, says row first. The very last player, Bradley Wright Phillips, a great player. The last and first won't matter. When we target a class of row, it will account for these as well. All right, so this is the first look at the first tag that is going to matter with us. We're gonna wanna grab all of the information associated with LI tags with a row class. Targets the container that holds all of the player information, but what about the finer details? So as I start scrolling, let's see where Blackman is up here. There we go. As I start scrolling through, notice, as I scroll through the tags, notice how things get highlighted on the actual page. And so you see that we have things like this info in here that's gonna have the player's name, the jersey number, the position, their hometown. There's really just a dash that holds this. Then there's this stats container that also holds things like how old they are, their height, their weight. And so we're gonna target all of these items, right? So a little bit of, from an HTML perspective, what we're going to do. And so if we were doing this like at the office work project, we would definitely be writing all in. Effectively for us here on the webinar though, we're just gonna grab all of these details using Beautiful Soup. All right, so now that we have a sense of what the website looks like, let's jump back in here. We have about 5 more minutes to review concepts and then we're gonna start coding. All right, these are the libraries that we're gonna need. Requests is gonna help us get a web call that we will then use Beautiful Soup to turn that web call into a text document that houses all of the HTML. And we will then use Beautiful Soup as well to target the tags within that HTML document. We're gonna be using pandas to really just handle the data. We're effectively gonna use pandas to turn lists into a data frame and then do some very light data cleaning. And then we will be using the Seaborn and Matplotlib libraries to do some very light data visualization. We're gonna build 3 charts. And so that's what we'll be using these 2 libraries for. Broadly, these are the steps we're gonna take. We're first going to prepare our soup, and that is really basically, let's prepare our HTML document. Then we're gonna target those specific tags in our soup. Then we're gonna loop through our data and append some key attributes to empty lists. Once we have appended our key attributes to the lists, we're gonna bring them together into a data frame, clean it up a little bit, and then do some light visualization. All right, and so this is a workflow that right here is like a very small use case, just a hand, like 28 players or so. But if you were doing this for work, this same workflow, could be applied and just scaled for your own intention. So this is what we're getting into. We are going to need to use 1 for loop. We're gonna have 7 different lists, 1 data frame, and 3 simple visualizations. All right, so that's what we're about to do. Here is the web page you all can go to get the notebook that I'll be working from. So if you want to follow along, go to the site bit.ly/LAFC bit.ly/scrape. bit.ly/LAFC_scrape. If you head to this site, this is where you're gonna land. I have it right here, but let me just triple check, make sure this is all working. Excellent. All right. So if you landed on our working document, you're not going to be able to, edit it. I'm going to be working off it, but you can go to File and save a copy in Drive, and now you can work from that copy. So if you want to follow along, just take a second, make a copy, and go to that copy. If you use GitHub, you can also publish to GitHub. This Google Colab is super, super helpful. All right, so you can go ahead and save a copy for yourself in GitHub and work from there. And like this. And as I mentioned, I will be sharing the links both to the solution and to the like dummy notebook with the organizers, and then they can share it out with the broader community. All right, so now let's get to what everyone is here for. Let's do a little bit of coding. All right, so as I mentioned, the first thing we need, as always, we need to import our libraries. We need to set up our workspace, right? So let's go ahead and import requests. A typical alias for this would be R. Let's go ahead and import beautiful soup. And the way we're going to do this is from bs4 import the library, beautiful, or the package, beautiful soup. Now we need pandas, so let's go ahead and import pandas. Typical alias is PD. Let's bring in Seaborn for that data visualization piece. So we'll import Seaborn, typical alias is SNS. And we need matplotlib to help us draw some of our figures. Matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. Excellent. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of our libraries. This should be complete. I'm going to run it. Cool. We know that works. That's good to go. For this next piece, I gave us a little bit of help. These are the 7 attributes that we're going to be grabbing from our players. So we're going to grab the names, numbers, the jersey numbers, the age, the position, hometown, their height, and weight. So if we reference the page here, the name, jersey number, position, hometown, age, height, and weight. All of these core attributes we will be grabbing, and to make that work for us, there's most definitely a more sophisticated approach to this. I believe you can probably do this with dictionaries perhaps, but we're going to be using empty lists. So let's go ahead and initialize our empty lists. I gave you all the names just to keep us consistent and so that we would spend time on more challenging code perhaps than just initializing some empty lists. And so now we have our 7 empty lists, which we will later on append our key attributes to. And so now that we have our lists, let's begin with the core parts of our soup. And so our soup needs a URL variable. That URL variable is going to be the website right here. I already gave it to us here. So we can just call this URL. And it's that. And then we also need a response variable. And that response variable is going to be a get call. So let's call this response. And this is going to use the request library, which if you recall, we use the R alias for that. And we're just going to pass our URL variable into this. Now, we could also not have a URL variable and just drop in our website right in here. This would also work. However, if you want to scale this up, you're better positioned to scale and iterate if you pass in a variable that then you can handle, if you have multiple pages that you might want to scrape. Maybe there were multiple pages to our player list and we needed to loop through multiple pages. It would be helpful to have that URL as its own variable, and then you can iterate on it before it gets passed to your response. So a few things you can do here. So we have our URL, we have our response. Now we need our HTML variable. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to pass response into Beautiful Soup. So let's go ahead and call Beautiful Soup, and we will just pass response into this. We're like building a puzzle, right? So we started with a URL, we passed that into response, and now we're going to pass response into our HTML variable. And from this HTML variable, we're going to create, wait, hold on, I'm missing response, HTML. Oh, I messed this up, sorry. I jumped one step ahead. Let's see what this response looks like, and then I'll show you what we're gonna do with this HTML variable. So this is just generating a response saying, okay, I have the stuff you need. This is a valid response. Now we need to turn this into text. So we're gonna create an HTML variable that turns our response call not into basically, is the response working or not, but it's gonna turn it into a text document. So now let's view this HTML variable. So you can see how it goes from just a response call to an actual document. There we go. So now we have this entire HTML document. We have it stored in our HTML variable, but this isn't very helpful to navigate, and there's a lot of clutter here that we don't really need. And so this is where Beautiful Soup is gonna be super helpful to us. So now from our HTML variable, let's go ahead and create our soup. So we'll create the soup variable. And this is where we're gonna be using Beautiful Soup. Let's pass that HTML variable into it. And let's go ahead and call soup. You will see that we're gonna get a document that is much easier to traverse. There we go. So it's more organized. It's actually presented as an HTML document in the same structure. And so it's easier to scan and identify things that you would otherwise really struggle to find if you were just looking at that big bulk of text. So we have our soup. Again, quick recap, we created a URL variable, which was passed into our request get call, creating our response. Then we use that response variable to create an HTML variable, looking really at the text of the get call. And then we created a soup using Beautiful Soup and passing HTML into it. So it's a little bit like a puzzle. All right, let's keep this going. So now that we've created our soup, we need to target the specific tags that we've identified. And so if you recall, we want to target li, div, and span. And so here we're going to write ourselves a little for loop. We're not going to write our for loop yet. Loop to tag. We first need to target our player. So out of this entire HTML document, we need to just really grab the player rows. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to create one more variable that is our players. And Beautiful Soup has the find all method. So call your soup variable and then find all of the list items that are class row. Now let's call players. All right, so we had our soup up above. That was the nice HTML document. It has all of this information like our footer and all kinds of things that we don't need for our scrape. We're now gonna get more granular and grab only the players. There we go. So now we have only the information for our players. Everything else is gone. So we've boiled down what we care about even more. Now we're going to get to our for loop. And so here we're going to be looping through these various tags, grabbing the specific attributes we want, and appending them to lists. So we're going to be using div and we're going to be using span. So for example, if we wanted, go here, we see the span with the class jersey. That's where the jersey number lives. So we're going to need to target that. We're going to target the div with class name where the name is stored, etc., etc. Right? So we're going to loop through each of these tags and append the key attribute to one of the empty lists that we created at the very top. All right, so let's start this for loop. So for every player in our players variable, let's do the following. If I find a div that is class name, this is what I need Python to do for me. I need Python to append yep, name to append all of this. Yep, link, class name. Okay, so if it has a div name and the class, I don't need this div. I'm gonna need the A tag. Where's the name? Name here. Okay, here we go. So when it finds a div with the name tag, it needs to grab the A tag and the name within that. So it's going to find the div where the name is stored, and then it's going to find the A tag that actually stores the text where the name lives. So it's going to look for the A tag, and it's going to look for class name, name, link, and I need the text of that. So we're going to replicate this for all of our lists. So if a div of class name is found, I need to append the text of the A tag to my names list. And we're going to replicate this for all of our 7 lists. So let's just copy this. Now we don't need, we've done name. Let's do now jersey. And for jersey, I have my cheat sheet over here. So if you see me referencing, I'm just making sure to follow along properly. So this is going to be for jersey. And this is not going to be the names list. This is going to be the numbers list. Numbers, we're going to append something similar here. If we find span container of the class jersey, and I already clearly, like, I did some of this exploration for us ahead of time, so this for loop would be a little more expedient. All right, so now we've done the jersey. Let's now do the ages. So if we find the div with birth date, then we're going to append to the ages list, and we are going to append a span, that HTML tag, and the class name for this is stat age, and same, we're sticking with that text. Almost there, we have 4 more to go. That was stat age. Let's now do position. So if player find span, we're going to do this as position. So all we're doing here is targeting the specific tags and their associated class name, so we can target the key attribute that we actually want. And so this is position. What is it? This is positions here. Positions, we are appending player, we are finding a span, and the class is position. It's like a big puzzle. So we've done the positions. Now we need the hometowns. This is a div. This class is hometown. The list name is hometowns. We're appending the div called document. We've done the hometown. Let's do heights and weight. Height is stored in a span tag, and it is called, the class name is stat height. And this is called heights instead of names. Height, and this is also a span. That is the same one here. Stat height, and our very last one, we'll review this for loop in a second. So we did the height, let's just do the weights. Span, stat, weight. This is weights, this is span, and this is stat weight. All right, so let's check this out. So we have our players. Each of these players have 7 attributes that we'd like. At the very top of this notebook, we had created 7 empty lists. Each of these 7 empty lists are now being iterated on through here, through this for loop. And so our loop is going to target some of the specific tags within our players variable and append the text of those attributes to the empty list. So let's run this for loop, make sure I don't have any typos or anything there. Excellent. All right, it worked. Let's now validate a little bit of this. So I'm just gonna print the length of a handful of these lists and just make sure that they're all the same name. And then we're gonna print some of these lists and just get a view of what it looks like. Numbers, and let's do one more. We'll do positions. And now, I just want to see what these actually look like, and let's do some spot checking. If we were doing this for work, we would definitely want to do more validation than this. But for a Saturday webinar, I think this will suffice. Okay, so of the 3 lists that we spot checked, we see that they're all the same length. That is good. And then we also spot checked here. We see names, we see jersey numbers, that all make sense. And then we see positions. So I would say for this particular use case, validation check, all right? So we feel good about this. We are making progress. Let's now move to a little bit more data handling. So we need to get to a place where we have this type of data frame, like I was giving you all some peeks here. So how are we going to create this data frame? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to create basically a list of lists by zipping up the individual lists and then turning them into one bigger list. So I'm going to call this zipped players. Call this whatever variable you'd like, but for me, this is zip players. And we need all of our lists. So let me just shoot up here to grab all of these names. I'll shoot back down here. There we go. Get rid of all this. All right, so we have our list here. Let's go ahead and zip these together. And now we'll turn this into a list. All right, so we're first gonna zip our list and then turn them into a list, giving us one new variable called zipped players. That worked, that's cool. And now we're gonna use the zipped players variable to get ourselves a data frame. And this is probably a workflow y'all are familiar with to some capacity. So we're gonna say data equals, we're just gonna call this data. We're gonna rely on pandas for this. So we want data frame based on zip players. And let's identify our column names. Columns equals names, numbers, ages, positions, hometowns, heights, and weights. Okay, just do a little spot check here. Closed our variable. Perfect. Okay. Let's also do one thing. Let's set our index to names. We'll set this index to names, and then let's just do a quick spot check. Let's see if this worked. Cool. We got our data frame. So we've gone now from having, you know, this nicely presented web page to having the information we want in there as a data frame. So you can see, you know, maybe you don't care about soccer, you don't care about LAFC, but I hope you could see how this could be helpful if you're trying to get data from, you know, a third-party website over to a workspace that could be helpful to you. Now, I know that I'm gonna wanna do some visualizations with weights and ages. So let's just check the data types of my columns. And so these are objects. So if I try to visualize this, you know, I'm gonna have some issues if I'm trying to treat them as numeric variables. So let's go ahead and change the ages and the weights to a numeric field. So let's go ahead and target those columns. We'll target them here again. And we need to turn them into numbers, to numeric, not numbers. And now we'll check our data types again. Ooh. Oh, I got an extra comma here. Doesn't need to be there. Cool. And so now our ages and our weights are an integer, and so we could better visualize them, you know, and things will be correct. So now we've concluded the data prep part. I know we're coming up on our last 10 minutes, so let's just build a few quick data visualizations here to get more familiar with our players. And so I'm going to rely on Seaborn to create a histogram of this. So I just want to create a histogram that helps me explore the player ages. LAFC is a very young team, so let's see if we can build a histogram that that proves that. So we'll use the displot method on SNS. We're going to call our data variable, and I already gave you all the 2 arguments associated with it, but we are going to target the ages column, of course. And I already gave you the 2 extra arguments that you would need, and I think we're good here. So let's run this. Excellent. And so we see it does seem like a bulk of the players are, you know, younger than 30. There's a lot of soccer teams that perhaps their players might be on the right side of the 25 and over. And so LAFC is a very young team. It's part of the style of play. It's part of the business model. They sell some of their profitable players. And so we validated, in fact, that LAFC is a young team. Sweet. Let's now build 2 more data visualizations. Let's build a swarm plot that is going to help us better understand like the relationship between player weight and player position. And so the first thing we need to do is to actually create a figure where the image will be drawn. And so we're going to use matplotlib for that. I give you all a big piece of the puzzle for it. And then we're going to use Seaborn swarm plot. We just need to identify our X, which is going to be positions. Our Y is going to be weights. And the data variable will be our data variable. And we want to give this a title, so we'll call this LAFC player weights by positions. Let's go ahead and draw this, see what happens. Interesting. Okay, so I would be curious about how this type of weight distribution looks like compared to the rest of the league. And you know, perhaps our defenders, maybe we need a few bulkier defenders, or maybe our midfield might need to bulk up or lean out. But it would be interesting to see how this compares to other teams across the league, and perhaps how this impacts style of play. You know, just some thoughts there. The last thing is let's go ahead and see basically what types of positions do we have most of. So let's just build a bar chart for ourselves, just looking at the player positions. So let's just build a little table. Actually, let's just go ahead and build our chart. Now let's build a little pivot table first. So we're gonna say, let's build a positions variable that is data, pulls on data. It looks at positions, and it just gives us a count. Counts, we'll need this later. Positions, data positions, value counts. Oh, let's print it. Okay, so we see 10. So let's just build ourselves a little bar chart of the same small table here, just, you know, to visualize it even more. So for that, we're going to call positions. We're going to use the plot method, and we really just want a bar chart that is horizontal. Bar H, this should work. Let's go and print it. Excellent. And so we have a reference table for ourselves, but here we see that we have a lot of defenders, then forwards, midfielders, goalkeepers, and then there's one player. You know, we could probably clean this up a little bit, this forward midfielder, and attribute this one player to either midfield or forward, depending what he typically plays. All right, friends, it's, well, 8:55 on my end, 6:55 for you all. That concludes our web scraping with Beautiful Soup. If this is the first time you're doing any web scraping with Beautiful Soup, I hope you had some fun. I hope this was helpful and insightful. And yeah, at this point, I'll turn it back over to our organizers and see if anyone has any questions. Let me see how I can give you all control back. I'm not sure how to do that. Can one of the organizers help me give up?
No.
Go ahead.
It's fine. We can. You can lift the presentation
Okay.
on. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you so much. It was so interesting, and I think our audience also enjoyed the session. And I think we have a couple of questions. Hassan? Hassan is here. Hassan, you are muted.
Okay. Thank you so much, Juan, for this great talk or workshop. Now it's time for your questions, guys. If you have any questions you would like to ask it to Juan, feel free to leave it in the Q&A section below. So we have one question from Hussein. He's asking which browser is best or recommended for scraping work. You are muted, Juan.
Sorry, could you repeat which what was recommended for work? Now you're muted.
This is the issue.
Okay, sorry. Which browser is best or recommended for scraping work?
Sure, sure. I use Google Chrome to explore the HTML, so I would recommend that as the browser of choice. And to that point, so that's the answer. I would recommend Chrome. Not all web pages are built in a way that allow for scraping, and so many times you might have to use Selenium. There's another, yeah, I think this is it. Selenium. This other library called Selenium, and Selenium will help you scrape websites that are built in a way that locks up the data. And so I would recommend that as a secondary library to use, but Google Chrome should work for all your scraping needs.
Okay, thank you. Another question from is asking about, from your experience, what were the best scraping use cases stories that you have seen or heard of?
Sure. I'll reference my presentation, something we talked about a little bit up front. I think these are the two best use cases for web scraping. Typically, I use web scraping for this to inform internal business intelligence, to inform internal resource allocation discussions, and to provide a little bit of market research and to enrich our data. But I have also seen and done web scraping use cases that are meant to drive traffic and awareness. And so typically these two are the pathways. Either you want to become more intelligent internally as an organization, or you want to create some type of content that will drive traffic and create awareness for your work.
Okay, thank you, Juan. Another question is from Raad. He's asking, I use get text a lot. Is that okay or just lazy?
I'm a believer of use whatever tools work for you. I'm gonna have to look that one up. I haven't used it, but if it works for you, do it. Yeah, I think programming and coding is about working smart, not just working hard. And so, some people think lazy. I see lazy as being work smart, save time, save effort, don't make your life harder than it needs to be.
Okay, thank you. We have other questions from Abdullah. Do you think that PS4 library is better or more efficient than Scrapy library?
I have heard better things of this Scrapy library. I've used it for classes. All of my projects, I've done Beautiful Soup, but I think that is only because of the resources that I had at my disposal. I had a mentor who was very familiar with Beautiful Soup, and I found more documentation in Beautiful Soup. But when I've used Scrapy, I've really enjoyed it. It just, Beautiful Soup was like an easier tool for me to pick up. But I would encourage you to get familiar with as many of them as possible.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Another question is, any people do you recommend we should check out the GitHub project to improve ourselves in this space, in addition to yourself, of course?
I'd have to, let me see. There's a few people that I follow. I was doing really good with my GitHub earlier in the year. How about this? Can I just send you all some recommendations? Because I'm not really building up my GitHub as much as possible. John Fincher is someone that writes a lot of blog posts, and he's actually like my uncle. But he writes for this organization called Real Python. And so they do a lot of tutorials. He used to work at Microsoft, and so he's one of the authors of this. I would encourage you to check out this blog, Real Python. They have a lot of wonderful stuff. And this is his GitHub. So jfincher42 is someone I would recommend, but I could look around and send over some additional recommendations.
Great. Hassan, do you have any other question?
Yes, I think we have one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. There are many websites that don't support the web scraping. What is the solution for these sites? It is from Hayam.
Yeah, it's a great point. Web developers and content and front-end folks are getting much more familiar, and they're realizing that people are scraping their content. So Selenium is that alternative. The way Selenium works is it will basically, as I understand it, I'm still getting familiar with it. It will store the information and let you target it in a different way than Beautiful Soup. So Selenium would be the way to get to the ability to scrape for web pages that are not built with all of the content up front. That would be my suggestion, Selenium.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We have, I think, one more question. No, I think we answered all the questions.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's it. I think we answered all the questions we have.
Great. Thank you, Hazem.
Great. So we definitely want to give a huge thank you to Juan. This was awesome and super helpful. Thank you again. Please follow us on Twitter for details about upcoming talks at PyData Jeddah. And with that, again, thank you, Juan. And thanks for everyone for joining.
Yes, thank you all. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Juan.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Keep up the good work.
Stay.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye. Bye. That was so nice. Bye.
You too.